Hey friends, I am so excited for this week's video. I had the opportunity to talk with one of the world's best SEOs, Nathan Gotch. Nathan runs a popular YouTube channel. He's the founder of the Gotch SEO Academy, and most recently, he became an author as he wrote this book called The SEO Entrepreneur. We have a lot to get to in this conversation. We're going to talk about the current state of SEO and why this might be the best year ever for you to invest in your SEO strategies. We're going to talk about how AI tools like ChatGPT are both helping and disrupting your online marketing efforts. And make sure to stick around to the end because Nathan's going to reveal if he was starting from scratch in this day in SEO, what he would do to optimize his efforts. All right, let's hop right into the conversation where I asked Nathan what his motivation was for writing his new book.
It actually kind of stemmed just from feedback from people inside the academy. And I realized that, actually this is statistically proven even outside of the academy that 10% of businesses ever get to $1 million a year. So, and it's actually, I think that's even generous. I think it's less than 10%. So in that range, less than 10% ever get to $1 million a year. But what I found based on my experience and in doing, many sales calls and my partner doing just many calls to get people inside the academy, most people are making, you could say less than $10,000 a month, right? Like most people are making less than that. So for me, I was like, okay, so the academy is pretty advanced, right? It's definitely more for someone who has a lot of experience in SEO. Maybe they've already got a nice pool of clients that they're working with. Like they're established, they're more intermediate level. So I was like, all right, I need to create something that's more for someone who's like basically just discovered what WordPress is, right? Like they're so fresh, they're so new. And I wanted to create something that could kind of cater to that person who's at that stage. And I've just found, just because we've done so many of these calls, that like, just because someone's making $10,000 a month, or sometimes even making $20,000 a month, you'll still find that their business is not set up appropriately. Like they may have gotten a couple good clients here and there and a couple good wins, but it was more happenstance. And I hate to use the word luck, and sometimes it is, right? Just good timing, whatever it is, led to get them to that point. But when you look at the business itself, you can tell that it's kind of like, let's just throw stuff at the wall and hope it works, right? Type of thing. So for me, I was like, all right, if I had to redo this, what would I tell myself when I was starting? And I basically just went through that whole process. So that's why, like in the book, I only talk about SEO kind of towards the end of the book, but it's really focused on like that foundational stuff that you need to at least increase your chances of succeeding as an entrepreneur, right? There's no guarantees obviously in this, but at least I know this stuff worked for me and I know it's worked for many other people. So I was just trying to give people kind of that foundational stuff that you would never learn in school, right? You just wouldn't learn this stuff. So that's kind of like my reason for it. And then of course, my more business reason for doing it, there's a lot of business reasons, right? Number one, being an author elevates your status just in general. And funny thing is I'm self-published. It's not like I got a publisher, but it doesn't make a difference to people. You're still an author. So that's a good thing. And then also my, like, if you want to call my diabolical reason for doing it is I know that if people use what's in the book and they get results, I know in a month from now, or maybe 6, maybe even 2 years from that point, when they get to that $20,000 or $30,000 per month mark, they're going to say, man, scaling's really hard right now in this SEO business. Oh, yeah, I do know that one guy, Nathan, who helped me get to this point. And then they'll join the academy, right? So that's my, like, if you want to call it my diabolical reason, but that's really like, it's more of like giving them what they need to succeed. And then when they're ready to go to the next level, I also have an option for that too. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I have my copy, and I mentioned before the call started, my 3-year-old daughter likes to sneak into my office and do some drawing. So it is what it is. But no, it's a great read, and I would recommend anyone in my audience to go and get it, and we can talk about how they can purchase it towards the end of the call. But
sure.
Followed you for a while, Nathan, and you've mentioned before that a lot of the blog posts that are out there, like you write them. So yeah. One question I have is, what was it like going from writing individual blog posts to a book that's hundreds of pages?
Definitely different. Yeah. Especially because like the way that I write in my blog posts is different because like I can interrupt with a lot of graphics and a lot of other visual things. And when you write a book, you can't go super crazy with visuals because they just don't turn out super well in the book. So that's why, like, that was another reason why I didn't want to write an SEO book, because a book about SEO, it would, like, for example, if Ahrefs changes their UI overnight, it's rendered useless, right? And I got to go back through and like just to even make changes in a book is a big process. Like I have to go back to the book formatter and tell him to make the changes, and I got to re-upload. It's a big deal to have to do it. So yeah, definitely a different experience. But one thing that I think makes the book unique, and obviously I'm very biased in this regard, but I think the way we wrote the book is very different than many other books that you've probably read. You can see back here, I read a lot of books, right? Like I read probably maybe a book a week, maybe a book every 2 weeks, roughly. And I can tell you, like most books, and I've read a lot of the top selling books, it's hard to get actionable insights out of a lot of these books, right? Like you got to really get deep into it and then try to extract these actionable things that you can actually go and use in the real world. But in this book, I really want it to be like, no, like these are actionable steps that you can take. And I also want it to be really simple as well, not like up in the sky theory type of stuff that you got to try to figure out yourself. More of like, no, this is exactly what you need to do. and like in a very straightforward way. So like I wrote the book, like the whole copy. I think it's like 46,000 words in that range. And then my partner, who's also a very, very gifted direct response copywriter, he came in and kind of put his touches in there too. And he kind of put some stuff in there on the sales side because he's really skilled at sales. And that's kind of how it ended up. So we just wanted to feel more kind of like personal, just more real. That's it.
Well, I mean, it definitely read in a conversational manner. After I read it, like I felt like there were some very simple but consistent themes throughout the entire book. One of the things that you talk about a lot is about like niching down, right? Yeah. So like starting with something very specific in mind. And then I was drawing the correlation just with SEO in general. We have long tail keywords that we focus on, right? It's a lot easier to rank for something that's a lot longer and more specific than something that's, a 2 or 3 word key phrase. So I guess my question for you is, with the process of niching down, like what does that mean? I mean, do you do that in other areas of your life? Is that a consistent theme that you intended to get out in the book?
Yeah. So it's funny because the way I built my SEO agency initially was not niche down at all. Right. Like I was purely like, whoever wants to work with me, come on in. That was my approach. You could argue that like I did niche down as far as location, which is one of the recommendations I give. Like you can niche down by location. So I did do St. Louis, and to this day still rank in St. Louis. And that was really valuable because I had a lot of leads coming in St. Louis that I could actually go to their office and talk to them and shake their hand and build that personal connection. And I've just found that like your close rate when you meet someone in person is so much higher than even doing like a Zoom call, or maybe even not even doing a Zoom call, which I would not recommend if you're trying to close someone. So many different ways to niche down. But for me, that's how I kind of started, was like, just like, I'm going to pick a location and I'm just going to try to dominate that location. And there's pros and cons of that. The pro is that you're casting a wide net, so you're going to get a lot of stuff. But that's also a con, right? Because every time I get a campaign, it was usually different. So like one day I would get a personal injury lawyer. The next day I would get a SaaS company. And like the way you have to think about a campaign is so different in those two different vehicles, right? Or let's say I get a e-commerce business too. So like at the same time, I'd be working on a local campaign, a SaaS campaign, and an e-commerce campaign. And they're just totally different frames of mind that you need to be in. So the problem is like every time I get a campaign, it's like starting over every single time. And so it worked for me. Obviously, like I could just kind of, I just made it work. But I always tell people like the only thing I would, and I hate using this because like I don't want to change anything that I did before because it would change where I am now. But if I was starting today, the one thing I would do differently is pick a niche and just become a killer in that niche. Like you just become the one that just dominates that niche. And it's funny because it's not hard. Like you could pick virtually any niche and you would be the leader in that niche probably within a year, because no one does it. Like you could pick anything: plumbers, landscapers, I don't know, anything you want. You could even go into SaaS, which is highly competitive, and you could pick a subset within SaaS to become the go-to there as well, right? So there's so many different ways to slice and dice niching down. Sometimes it's based on location. Other times, which I recommend, is more like picking a particular niche or vertical that you can go in. So like endodontists or, something like that. And then you can actually do it based on the service level too. Like if you wanted to get really specific, you could be like, I just do link building for endodontists. Your market's going to be pretty small there, right? But like, think about your competition is zero. Like you are the only one who would be the link building guy for endodontists. Like, and you could dominate that market very quickly. So, I think people tend to have like, and it's just natural tendency. We tend to think very big as far as what we need to do to capture a market. And like the SaaS industry's known this for a long time. They've been doing this let's say the good SaaS companies have been doing this well for a really long time. They pick a tiny, tiny little vertical and they just dominate that little tiny niche. And then they start to expand out once they've dominated, right? They don't just start with like, we're going to be this big, huge SaaS company. They start with like, no, what's this one segment of the market that we can really attack? And what you find out is like, even small segments are hard to dominate. Like once you really get into it, you're like, man, like the example I like to use is where I live. I live in a very small city outside of St. Louis. I'm in St. Louis County, but it's outside of St. Louis City, in the suburbs. And where I live, there's only 12,000 people that live here. Oh, wow. Like it's not a lot in this one little city, but there's almost 100 businesses in just this one little tiny city. 100. So you could literally become the go-to SEO expert in a tiny little 12,000 person city and build a very successful business. Like you could become that guy. So I'd say like that's the one thing I would do differently, and that's why I get so like excited about it, because I've seen also my friends do it and succeed very, very well. Like Chris Dreyer, which I'm sure you maybe heard his name, but founder of rankings.io, he started just doing personal injury. And he didn't go off that course for a long time. I think now they do more lawyers, but now like he was on that path. Like that warpath was just personal injury. And now it's like when someone comes to me and it's personal injury lawyer and I'm like, I don't take on clients right now. I just say, yeah, just go to Chris. Right. So you start to get this weird situation where not only do you can dominate the niche super well, but then you also become like this kind of like referral based situation as well, where people are like, oh yeah, I know that Scott does this. So I'll just send it over there. Right. So there's just so many benefits. And then I didn't even talk about like the operational side of it as well, which is you're getting similar clients. So then the operations is actually easier to fulfill as well. The campaigns become easier because they're all kind of similar. There's a lot there. And then as far as like, if I niche down in real life or whatever that may be or where it stems from, all I can say is that in the academy, when I first launched the academy in 2016, I just tried to do like, this is an SEO course. Like anyone who wants to join this SEO course. And that was fine, right? I got a lot of different people. I got affiliate marketers. I got niche site builders. I got agency people. Like it was just kind of everywhere, even business owners. But with this new training, I realized that the people that succeed the most with what I do are other agencies and other people who have clients. So now we only do SEO training for agencies. Now, of course, if you're a business owner, you want to come learn an SEO process that actually works, it will do that, right? That's absolutely. But the people who we have positioned ourselves to serve the best are, SEO training for agencies. So we've picked a niche, and I cannot express how much better it's been across the board. It's amazing. So.
Do you think it's an ego thing that some folks are resistant to like niching down at the start? Or do you think it's like a fear-based mindset where, your example with how many businesses are in your area, if there's 100 businesses and you're able to sign 20 of them on as clients at a $5,000 retainer, I mean, we're talking, you're making six figures. But do you feel like it's an ego thing, or do you think it's just people feel that if they niche down, there's not going to be enough market for them?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily an ego thing, but I definitely think it's more of a scarcity mindset. So fear, scarcity, that kind of leads them into that, because I just think it's our natural tendency to think that like we have to conquer the whole world when we start a business. And that's just simply not true. Like if you look at businesses that are truly successful, that really dominate their industry, they're very focused usually. So like example I like to use is like Calendly, right? Like they just do one thing. Like they don't try to be like they're on a messaging app and a landing pages. No, you just schedule appointments. That's what they do. right? Even Loom, like another example, like they just got acquired for almost like some insane amount. I think it's almost $1 billion. Like,
Jeez.
they just do one thing. Like, they just let you record videos and then share them with people. Like, they're not trying to be everything to everyone, and you don't need to be. That's been me. Like, it's taken me a long time to figure that out. But now that I know, it's like, it not only makes you better at SEO, there is a lot of connections there with SEO as well, which we can talk about how like keyword research integrates once you have a proper niche and stuff. But it just makes you better at business, right? Business gets easier when you're focused. Because when I say, like, let's say you want to do an outreach campaign, you want to reach out to all the businesses, and you say, well, we're an SEO company. It's like, okay, well, who are you going to reach out to? Well, I don't know, everyone, right? Like, that's so difficult. Like, how are you going to tailor your message to that? You can't. So you got to get super specific. And that's why, like, if I'm doing, let's say I decide to do cold outreach for like agencies who want to join my training program, like, just on Clutch alone, I think there's, I forgot the exact number. It's some huge number of agencies. So I went to Clutch and I saw, okay, how many agencies actually are there? And the number's like astronomical. I mean, it's just like, we couldn't even if we captured just 1% of that market, we would have an enormous business. So, so that's just the way I think about it now, is like, I think it's weird. I think really small now. I used to think like, I think that's kind of natural tendency, is like, think big and, do big things and 10X and all, you hear that stuff all the time. But when it comes to building a business, that's not a good idea. It's better to start really small and dominate one little pocket and then slowly expand. I mean, that's what Amazon did too, right? They just sold books. So, and I think we know how they've done now. So
yeah, they're doing okay. So yeah, I mean, to tie a bow on this, I mean, it's easier to start small and expand out than try to start big and then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny too, because that's what I did initially. And it's impossible for me to niche down now. Like, the only way for me to niche down is I have to build out kind of separate assets altogether and just build out like a separate business altogether. And at this point, obviously the maturity of my business doesn't make sense for me to do that. But yeah, you kind of put yourself into a box when you do that. It makes it difficult to actually niche down. So I would recommend in the beginning, like, picking 3 to 5 niches that you're interested in. And I get this question a lot, is like, what niche should I go into? And I think it's definitely finding what you have maybe some sort of knowledge of, or some sort of experience in, some sort of connection to. It's not a requirement, but I think it just helps a little bit. So like, a member of the Academy yesterday asked this question, and he realized, he's like, yeah, well, actually my family, I have a lot of people in the trades. So I have, plumbers in my family and all this stuff. He's like, so maybe that should be kind of the path I should go. And so he's going to do like SEO for plumbers in Canada. Right. And like, think about that market, who's there? I mean, like, it's a blue ocean. So that's what you're trying to find, is like where that blue ocean is. And not to pitch my book or anything, but if you buy the book through my website, I actually give you a free download. And it's a niche like database. So I scraped every single category from Google My Business and put it into a database, and then categorized it based on competition. So you can go in there and see, like, SaaS is like a 10 out of 10 as far as competition. Not recommended, right? Unless you have a lot of capital and a lot of experience, then maybe. But just niching down and finding one that's like totally untapped is definitely the best path to go.
Awesome, man. Well, another point from your book that I thought was really interesting. We're getting close to December here in 2023 at the time of this recording. We're probably close to another SEO is dead article being launched on the internet.
For sure.
And one of the points that you have in the book is kind of counter to that now is one of the best times ever to be doing SEO. So wondering if you could comment on that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, I've been doing SEO. I've been in the pit since 2011. Okay. It's all I've thought about. It's all I've done for over 10 years. Like, literally, it's all I've done. I have not done anything else. And it's all I think about. And I can tell you, there's only been a few times that have been where there's been a lot of excitement, not necessarily always in a good way. So like, the first is like when the algorithm updates were really aggressive back then with Penguin and Panda and the exact match domain updates. And then also there was a PBN update as well that wrecked me really badly when I was doing PBNs and Gray Hat SEO. So I think back to those times, but then like after those kind of really huge updates, things got pretty kind of, not a whole lot really changed. I mean, you got featured snippets and okay, now you need an SSL certificate and now we care about loading speed. Just okay,
right.
Nothing super exciting. But when ChatGPT launched, that just changed the game. And honestly, funny thing is I was already creating AI content prior to ChatGPT. I was using Jasper to do a lot of tests. So like I would do tests and then I would run them, share the experience in the academy. And that was working even then. And then when ChatGPT, I didn't even know ChatGPT was even a thing when it launched. And then when it launched, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is insane. And so the reason why I think it's so exciting, there's a few reasons. Number one is what you can do now is insane. Like the things that I can do now, I could have never done before without a developer. Like I would have needed a developer. I would have needed a data scientist. I would have needed all these extra people who are very expensive, by the way. Like developers are not cheap. Good ones are not cheap. And good data scientists are not cheap. But the fact that you can pay $20 a month and you can go into ChatGPT and it can literally be a data scientist for you in seconds is like, if people, when I see people not using the technology, I'm like, you don't understand what you're missing out on. Like you can do so much. It's not even like the like writing of copy. I think that's like that's not even the cool part of what it can do. Like the things that excite me is like the data analysis. Like it can process data at such an insane level so fast that like it make your head spin how quickly it can get through that stuff. So like the data side and then the coding, right? You can create little tiny applications, little pieces of link bait literally in like 30 minutes to an hour and get that live on your site. Like it's just, there's never been a time where you can create things at this magnitude, at this speed, and this cheaply. There's just it's literally was not possible before. And then now, like with the generative like images that you can do, even that's insane. You can immediately improve your content just by adding kind of like a visual side to your content now. And the artistry that this thing produces is like, you would have had to pay someone a huge amount to be able to produce something very similar. And it would have taken them 30 days or 45 days to get completed, especially if there's someone who's good and they're backlogged, right? So there's just a lot of things and you can just do that literally at the snap of a finger. I mean, it's just, and like, I'm just scratching the surface. There's a lot of other use cases. But like even a small thing, like in the academy, not to rant on this, but it's just very exciting. Even just improving how you use Google Sheets. No one ever talks about this, but like when I was rebuilt, so I rebuilt my training in the academy from scratch because of all the developments of AI. So like I had a good training program and it was very advanced, but I was like, I can't, like everything's changed. Like I have to rebuild this with AI in mind now. So I rebuilt a lot of it. And like, even just the smallest of things, like I was putting in, I was never really like I would never say I was like a good Google Sheets guy. Like I just didn't really care about learning Google Sheets a whole lot, like at the most advanced level. So I was doing pretty elementary stuff, but I started to create formulas in Google Sheets that I never created before, all because of ChatGPT. So I'd go to ChatGPT and say, hey, how can I create a Google formula, like Google Sheets for this one specific thing? And it would, of course, create it. It's not always perfect. You got to kind of back and forth a few times. But then all of a sudden, now I've got this like insane thing in Google Sheets that I could have never done prior to this point. I mean, I could have done it, but it would have been expensive to do and it would have taken a very long time. And there's no chance it would have even been that good. And the other part is, this is kind of the funny thing is when you communicate with ChatGPT, like it accepts feedback, right? You give it feedback, it says, okay, yeah, I'll fix it. But sometimes we know working with humans, that isn't so simple, right? Like you say, thanks for the graphic. Honestly, it sucks. Like, what can you start over? You can't say that, right? So it's not the way we communicate. So then now there's this awkward situation where you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And then then your work gets worse because you can't be honest with people. And that's the beauty with ChatGPT is I can give it pure, honest feedback, and it will change and it will adapt and it will get better based on that feedback. So
Yeah.
it's the best team member that's ever been invented. So
I agree. And I think right now, a lot of it is just focused on the generative text. And I mean, I'm not going to say it's gimmicky because I mean, I'm sure you use it, I use it, but on the data side, I mean, the fact that you can upload a CSV and get the insights that you can in a matter of seconds is truly unreal. And in this age of AI, or in this age of SEO that we're in, you know, with expertise, authority, and trust, you know, you have the ability to do just some light research and use ChatGPT and then publish some amazing statistics and findings on your website. Original. Yeah. Incredible.
So it is really incredible. So that's why I'm excited this time, because I don't want to say, so SEO as a whole is probably the most difficult that it's ever been. Like when you think about across the board, like there's just, to be good at SEO these days, you need to be good at a lot of things. And I was just talking to my wife about this. I was like going on a little rant the other day, but I was like, man, in 2011 to 2000, let's say 14, roughly, SEO was so stupidly easy. I mean, it was just dumb. Like I could go after a keyword, throw up a stupid little page that had like a headline, subheadline, video, outbound link to Wikipedia, and then I would just slam that page with PBN links and I would rank. It was literally like, it was so stupidly simple that a lot of the people that were around at that time are gone now. Yeah. Because it's gotten so much more difficult. And plus, on top of it, you have Google, who's doing constant Google updates. That I think at this point, not to get into conspiracy theory, but I think at this point, it's mainly an attempt to muddy the waters. They're just they're just doing so many things that it's becoming difficult to even know, like, okay, well, was it that variable or this variable, or was it? And now it's just getting to a point where it's like, okay, you basically have to ignore them because you can't really draw any conclusions based on anything. And plus, I mean, I look at the search results and they're just not better. They're not better. Like objectively, they're not better. These updates have not, like you think about with the SaaS company, like if you build a tool and you do an update to that tool, you put a new feature in, usually you're putting in a new feature because it's going to be better for the users, right? You're creating something because you've got some sort of feedback from the users and you're like, we're going to make our tool better. But for some reason, when Google does updates, their platform does not get better. It doesn't improve. It tends to see, and especially recently, it's been getting worse. And so I don't know if it's because they're using more AI to try to determine the rankings and the AI is actually not that good at doing it. And maybe they need to go back to traditional machine learning. I don't know what it is, but I've just noticed, like, even a small example, just to not to kind of rant on this, but like if you look up San Antonio wedding bands, okay, look that up. It will show you how stupid Google is, because I'm serious. It is, you can tell it's so confused. It does not understand the intent behind that, because when you search San Antonio wedding bands, it could mean two things. It could mean like wedding bands in San Antonio, or it could mean like literally wedding bands that you can hire in San Antonio. So people way overestimate how smart Google is. It's like, it really struggles with that, because it's so ambiguous to try to deliver the relevant results. So especially when you're doing incognito searches, it doesn't have any like user tracking data that it can use on you. And if you're using like different IPs and proxies and things, it's just like guessing. It's like, I hope this is right. Like that's basically what it's doing. So, which makes our job really difficult, right? It makes the job really difficult, because if I want to rank a wedding band, like let's say they do their wedding band company in San Antonio, like they do music. Like, how do I handle that? Right? Like if Google's not showing the relevant results, ranking almost becomes impossible, because you need to create relevant results to rank. So not to go off on a tangent, but it just, the reason why, and this is also to kind of conclude on this, the other reason why it's exciting. So number one, AI, obviously technological advances have made SEO better in many ways, and you just have more opportunity to do great stuff in a shorter amount of time. But the other reason why it's great is because most people like doing what's easiest, right? And
Yeah.
people, like most people who want to make a quick buck, will gravitate towards whatever medium is going to be the easiest to do. And that's why, like, we all see the YouTube ads. I don't see them anymore because I have YouTube Premium. But when they were on there, and I would see them, and like these internet marketers who were like, start a social media marketing business, and it's like, social media marketing is really difficult. Like, you can't just like take anyone on and get them results. Like, it's really challenging to do it the right way. But of course, it's just because it's a quick buck, right? A lot of these people pushing it now with SEO, like, there is no quick bucks in SEO. Like, it is difficult. You have to have a very intense process to get results these days, especially depending on how the competition level rises. It gets even more difficult. To me, because the barrier to entry in SEO is not big. Anyone can become an SEO. Anyone can do SEO. But I think the barrier to entry to get results has gotten much more difficult. And not just to get them, but to maintain them has become even more challenging than ever before. And you need to know a lot of stuff to be able to do it. And you need to be able to adapt on the fly too, which is not an easy skill. So we can get into whatever you want to, but that's just something
I love this conversation there. I mean, you just talked about people go the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
So someone can go to ChatGPT, say, write me a blog post about blank, publish, put it on their website. Is it going to get worse before it gets better? Or do you feel like we've reached the tipping point with quality of content out there? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think it's one important thing to, like, a slight nuance is, sometimes I think people think I'm against AI content, but the funny thing is I've been using AI content for a long time and ranking it for a long time. I'm not opposed to using AI to create content. I'm opposed to auto-generated AI content, because that's just like no thought, just, boom, throw here, write me an article about best Nike cleats. You're not even trying. Like, and there's nothing in life that ever comes easy, right? There's no free lunches. And even if you get a little bit of success, it will be short-lived. It's just inevitable, right? Now, there are ways to use AI to create content the right way. And like we kind of already discussed, this is like you finding original data, right? Finding original data, having the AI analyze that data and give you, it becomes original research. And then based on that, you can either decide to have it write conclusions based on that data, which then the content is original, right? Even though it was written by AI, it's still original because the seed at which it was created is an original idea, right? So that's really what I think about, is like, is this an original idea? It doesn't matter whether it's written by me or AI. I've tested this actually, me versus the AI, and the rankings don't seem to change at all, right? I mean, it doesn't seem to make a difference. But I will say the one advantage that a subject matter expert has when writing content is just nuance, right? There's just certain little things, like when I write a piece of content, AI can't replicate me, because the way I'm gonna present it, the way I'm gonna talk about it, the weird examples that I might use that the AI would never think of because it's not me. Like, I'm probably gonna use, like, for example, I'm writing a blog post right now about, funny thing is, what is SEO? I know, so very extremely broad thing that I've never actually ever targeted on my website. And the example I'm using is about dinosaur toys, because my daughter loves dinosaur toys. So I'm going through this whole long journey about this one example, and I'm finding like specific, people that are ranking there. But like, could AI replicate that? Maybe, but it's just so specific that it just is very unlikely, right? Very unlikely. I don't know how capable Google is to decipher, because it's hard for, like, people say Google can like measure the quality of content. I question that a lot. I don't know if Google has the capability to look at two pieces of content and objectively say this one is better and this one is not. I don't think it's that clear cut. I think they're using a lot of other signals externally to determine that the content is good, because I don't think it has that capability. Now, I think there are some other things, like obviously Google uses NLP to understand what that content is and the relevance of that content. So you could argue that a page that hits on more of those relevant connections is higher quality than one that does not, right? So like, and this is, unfortunately, I hate to say word count, but like, word count isn't a ranking factor, right? It's not a ranking factor. But something that is longer has more likelihood that's going to hit on more of those topics that Google would expect to see, as opposed to one that's 300 words. I mean, when's the last time you've seen something 200 words that's ranking? I mean, it doesn't happen. It just is so rare. And countless studies have shown this, that, a certain word count or whatever is what is seen among pages that are ranking well. But I think some people see that as, oh, okay, so I need to write a long piece of content. Which isn't necessarily what it means. It just means that the people who are ranking have long pieces of content, and that's probably leading to other things that Google's looking at. The other thing too is this is also on the length implies strength as well, which is a concept from direct response writing. Naturally, when someone sees something that's longer, we tend to perceive that value is higher. Just because it's longer, the value is perceived as higher. And so the reason why that matters is because in the context of link building, people are more likely to link to something that seems more comprehensive than something that is not. So this is why it's like, there's so many things working together. It does, like I said, doesn't matter whether you wrote it by AI or a human, it just matters that it's original. But as far as the quality, I hate to say this because it's so hard to predict, but I think that a lot of the excitement has flattened off. Like if you go and look at like the trend of ChatGPT, like you'll see the huge spike in, let's say, November to March, in that range is really going crazy, but it's been going down now because unfortunately, I think people who are not in the weeds just don't actually know how to use it to their advantage. I think they just see it as like, oh, this is awesome. This is cool. Look at all those things. It can write poems and like, but I look at it as like, this is a tool that I can leverage in my process. Yes. Like, and I'm looking for different ways. So yeah, as far as like content quality, I mean, I don't worry about that because like, it's not my responsibility for Google to show like what Google does. Like if Google's not going to show good results, that's their problem. Right. And like, most of the time there is a lot of content out there that doesn't get the coverage or the visibility that it deserves because unfortunately Google is still so heavily driven by backlinks. Just is. I mean, you look at the updates. Who are the sites that don't get hit? They're sites with massive authority. They just don't move. Yeah. They get pure ranking stability, even when they write garbage content. It doesn't even matter. So that's why I wish it was like a fair situation where it's like, the best content will win, but it doesn't. It just doesn't work like that because we know that the best content doesn't win. The content that has attracted the most signals will win, whether that's real or artificial. I mean, this just goes back to how Google was originally built, and it was built based on PageRank, right? That was like their original kind of thing, and links were a huge piece of their ranking equation. And I think over the years, because they've been able to use other signals, that they've been able to decrease the reliance on links. But I think to this day, links are still the big heavy hitter just because Google views them as votes at the end of the day. And I mean, it's a really difficult signal to replace because it's difficult to manipulate. It requires a lot of effort to manipulate. Google has built multiple algorithms to combat link spam. So they've got the foundation to combat manipulative practices. And so I think it will continue to be a huge variable, but there's a lot of other things that matter these days. And like, Google's going through this antitrust lawsuit right now, and they're releasing all this kind of like documents. And the funny thing is they talk about user signals, right? But the funny part is they say that like this literally came from a Google employee that said that they built Google Chrome to support Google search. And if you read between the lines, you know what that means. You know that they're using all the stuff that goes on Google Chrome with the users is translating over into the algorithm in search. Why wouldn't they? I mean, what company wouldn't use data to their advantage? There's absolutely no reason they wouldn't use it. And so like, if you read my blog post and then you go and bookmark my blog posts and then you come back to my website again, and then there's a lot of people that do that. These are signals that are likely being tracked. And it's not just that. There's also tracking like how long people are staying on the page and what are people doing, like this interaction data. And I just think about like, Google's $1 trillion company now, and like they can do a lot. they know what's going on. I mean, think about it. Like, let's be honest here. There's no privacy. There's no privacy in this game at all. They know everything about you. They know everything you're doing. They use all that data to their advantage to either help their advertisers or to inform their search to make it better, which then makes people want to advertise more. So there's just a lot of things going on, but I think, links, like if I were to put it on like a percentage as far as how important it is at this point, I'd say it's like 25% of the equation, roughly, maybe more. I'm being conservative, but I think it's at least a quarter of the equation. Like you can get everything else right. Like you could nail every other variable, but if you don't have links, it's going to be hard.
So in the current state of SEO, with Google being the top dog, I mean, they've been the top dog forever. Do you feel that there's anything that could ever knock them down?
Oh, man. Yeah, I wish I knew the answers to that question.
Sorry, we went from conspiracy theories to now what's the demise of Google?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anything can happen overnight because they have a tendency to destroy their competition in whatever way possible. So either they're going to acquire their competition or they're going to create a competitor to their competition that does the exact thing the competitor does, or they'll probably bury them in some sort of legal nonsense to destroy them. So they just have a lot of tools at their disposal. They're so powerful at this point, and they have 90% of the search market share. So it's like, could something come in? Maybe. I think the only big threat, and I don't think ChatGPT is really a threat per se to them at this point, but I think more of a threat would be if some sort of alternative search engine came that was like, I don't know, had general super intelligence or something type of AI that could just like, you could ask it like, tell me the best Nike shoes. And then it would just tell you instantly and it would scan the whole internet and would tell you, oh, these are the best based on 5,000 variables, like in a split second. Once you can do that, I mean, we're in trouble. Our jobs are in trouble for sure. And like, I'm not ignorant of that. Like I think about it a lot. Like what's the doomsday scenario? And I've thought about the doomsday scenario even many years ago. I'm like, well, if there was a way that the search engine could give you the exact answer, like without you having to do any additional research, that's where things get complicated, especially if someone comes in who doesn't care about ad revenue and they just care about, you can use our search engine. It's $5 a month. You don't have to worry about ads. We'll just give you the exact answer you're looking for. I mean, that would be pretty scary. So, and I don't know like how far off we are to something like that, but I think I don't think that's even conspiracy. I think there's definitely a possibility. I mean, Google's trying to do that right now with SGE. I mean, it's trying to answer questions just without you even having to go do anything else. Is it doing it well? No, but we're still in the very early stages. Right. And this stuff, we've seen how fast. I mean, look at how much ChatGPT, we're in about a year now since ChatGPT launched. Like, think about how much advanced it's gone from just then to now is like mind-boggling. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, I'd say on that side of things, that's where something could disrupt Google. But at the same time, Google's not just Google search, right? They've got a lot of their hands in a lot of other things. YouTube, I mean, no one ever talks about YouTube, but like,
right.
Google has like, of the traditional search share has like 90%. You want to know what their search share for like video is? It's like 100%. I mean, the only competitor they have is Vimeo, and Vimeo doesn't even try to do what YouTube does. So like they literally have no competition. I mean, it is like, you want to talk about a monopoly? YouTube it's not even close. I mean, I don't know how anyone can ever beat YouTube. I mean, it is just, I love YouTube, by the way. It's like, I think it's like, I use YouTube more than any other platform, like in my personal time. I think it's the best. But so yeah, they're a juggernaut, man. I think it's going to take some serious capital and some serious like crazy technology to beat them. And even then, it would have to also take some crazy entrepreneur who doesn't care about getting paid off. Like someone who just like wants to crush Google for some weird reason. They just like want to destroy them. So that's what it would take as well, right? Because I guess everyone has a number, but there's some people who can't get paid off.
Finalizing the conversation about Google with SGE, the search generative experience, which is AI answers inside the Google search results. How do you feel about it? Do you feel that it's ever going to get out of beta? I feel like a lot of folks think it was like a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, ChatGPT, we got to do something quick. Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I actually do agree that it was a knee-jerk reaction. I think Google was majorly caught off guard by ChatGPT and how successful it was. I mean, like I don't think they were prepared for that. So they were like, even you can go and look at like the internal dialogue at Google. They had like code red and all this stuff. They were freaking out. They didn't know what to do. So that's why all of a sudden Bard launches, and then now they're launching SGE. And but yeah, I mean, as far as like, I try to be really careful, which is very difficult, right? You don't want to go too far in the future with your thinking and too far, like, right. You don't want to make decisions based on what hasn't happened, and you don't want to make decisions based on the past either. So you want to try to, like, I try to find like, okay, today, what's happening today, and how do I react to what's happening today, while also considering like, okay, maybe in 6 months something could potentially change here. So just thinking through that. And like, as far as SGE goes, I look at it and I think it's not great. It's basically glorified search again. It's not like doing anything that's super revolutionary. And it's also a situation where you have to assume that users will trust that information. And I don't like based on what I've seen, it doesn't present information in a way that where I'm like, oh yeah, I got the answer I needed. It like presents information. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to do some more research. Like I'm not like really satisfied with this answer here. So I think it's definitely in the early stages. Like I said, I don't know how far it will develop. I think if Google could do what I was describing earlier, as far as answering directly, and like, it's also an awkward situation too, because Google doesn't create anything. Google just basically borrows everyone's stuff. And then that's what it is. And that SG is the same way. It's taking everyone's stuff and then giving you an answer. And so, yeah, it's a weird situation right now. That's all I can say. It's very weird. But as far as like what I'm doing, as far as optimization, I just take it one day at a time. What I do is I look at the SERPs and I look at what I'm seeing today. And I try to make adjustments based on what I'm seeing today. And that's really all you can do at the end of the day. And the thing is, like, when it comes to ranking, things change so much. Like you could have developed an SEO strategy, like a perfect strategy, and you could rank, let's say, you're number 3 for your keyword. And then in like 3 months from now, Google says, no, we think the intent of this is different. So then it shifts the whole search results. And it's not that you did anything necessarily wrong. It's just that it's no longer a good fit for that keyword. So there's just a lot of things. So that's why for me, like, I'm constantly monitoring and kind of keeping tabs on certain queries. And like going back to the San Antonio wedding bands one, like that would be one where I'd be like, okay, I'm going to monitor what's going on here, because there's going to be some weird stuff going on this one. But yeah, I think the SEO industry gets pretty hypey about certain things, and I don't go that path. I'm just like, okay, yeah, SG's here. It's probably going to take some clicks, whatever. Like, let's just keep going. Yeah. Like, what are you going to do about it? You're not going to do anything. You can try to optimize for it, just like you can try to optimize for featured snippets. People were crying about featured snippets too when that happened. So yes, we're all still here. We all survived. So it's the same thing. I think worst case scenario, it takes a lot of clicks away, but that's already been happening. That's nothing new. Google's been taking clicks from us for years and years and years. So I think that will continue down that path. But I will say the one thing that I think is going to be really, really important going forward, especially because it's so, like, the barrier to entry to create content is so easy now, like anyone can do it. I think what matters now is really that personal connection, that real experience, like Google, mentions in the EAT guidelines, that E that they added, experience, I think is really, really important. Like if you're creating, especially if you're creating like an affiliate website, like you would have a death wish if you create an affiliate website and you just try to pump out like informational content, or you try to just like do a product review by looking at Amazon reviews and like creating some, cumulative thing. Like you're just asking for it. Like the days of just picking a random niche on Amazon and creating an affiliate site are over. Like, and I used to do that all the time. Like I talked about in other calls before that I had a under-counter ice maker reviews website. I didn't even have an under-counter ice maker. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know barely how it worked. I was just writing random review stuff based on stuff I pulled, and it worked, right? I was ranking. But these days, if you wanted to do that, like the only way you'd be able to do that is if you went and bought every under-counter ice maker and you actually tested them in the lab. Like if you did that and you went to that level of effort, it will work. I know that for a fact. It will work because there's no one else will do that. That's insane. Who would buy $300 under-counter ice makers like to test them, right? What affiliate's going to do that? But that's what it takes these days. And like you can go to ratings, rtings.com. They're a good example of like what good affiliate content looks like. Like they literally buy a TV, they take it to their lab, and they literally treat it like a science experiment, like down to the most granular level. And you could see the results. I mean, it's just they don't move during these updates. Why is that? Because no one else does anything that they do. So I think this just goes back to like being really, really unique, really original, and just doing like I've really been going on here for a long time, but just one more thing is like, unfortunately, tools like Surfer and on-page SEO tools, I think have kind of lulled people into thinking that they have to copy. Like, so they go and what the tools do is they analyze the first page and say, okay, based on the first page, here are the types of keywords you should use. Here are the things that you should do. And people look at them like, oh, okay, well, if this website's doing it, then I'm going to do the same thing. And then therefore, if I do the same thing, I'm going to rank. It's a horrible way to think about content. Like there's never a good situation, even when we're talking about in business, like you don't want to just be the same as everyone else. Like that's not the goal. Like you need to create something that's different that actually can make an impact. If you just look like everyone else, then you can't expect to get great results or stay there for a long time. But when you create something that's like truly unique, it's harder to push people out.
Yeah. So, I mean, and also you mentioned with your process, finding out what else is out there, but making yours 10 times better. Yeah. And again, we talk about ChatGPT, it's sometimes you need that manual work to be able to put your personal touch on it.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's it's funny. Being better is one thing, right? Being better is one part of it. But what I think about a lot is like, what's my unique angle? Like, so when I look at a top 10 of results, and this is just in the context of Gotcha SEO, but like when I see the results, I want to say like, okay, what's something I could create that hasn't been done before, like for this keyword. And if like some people will say like, they're like, oh, well, if you see that everyone has like how-tos, you should do a how-to. And I'm like, if everyone has how-tos, why would I do a how-to? It's already been done. Like, I'm not going to do the same thing that everyone else has done. And funny thing is like a lot of keywords in the SEO space, I haven't even targeted just because I haven't been able to come up with an angle that I think is sufficient to rank. Like I will look at a search results and I'll say, this has been nailed. Like I don't know what unique thing I can do here. It's been taken care of. But when I do see one, I will attack it like crazy. So like one of them is, I did one for best keyword research services, right? Or keyword research service. I kind of found that idea. And I found on the first page, it was all just like transactional pages. Like it was people basically selling their keyword research services. So I was like, "Ooh, okay, I got something here I can do." So what I did is I went and I purchased 11 keyword research services. I bought literally 11 of them, just like I found some on Google, I found some on Fiverr, I found some on Upwork, and I created a listicle of the best keyword research services based on like actual practical experiments. It's done really well, right? It's been ranking, and the funny thing is like it's not any longer than anyone else's. It doesn't have more words, but the angle is unique. And I did this actually many years ago. I think 2016, I published a case study about the best CMS for SEO. And I did the same exact thing. I saw it was every single one on the first page was like just listing CMSs. It wasn't any reason for saying that one was better than the other. It was just like, well, yeah, people like WordPress, so that's number one. And people also use Shopify, so that's number two. That was their rationale for the rankings. So I was like, well, I'm just going to actually like go and look at sites that are ranking and say which ones actually are ranking based on the CMS that they're using. So I looked at 10,000 keywords and then created a case study on that. And that post even now, I think it still fluctuates around 7 or 8 or something, but I have not touched that post in 7 years. It's still on the first page of Google. And it's not, and like, you'll notice, like, if you look at my DR, I'm like a DR of 73. Like the ones all around me are like DR 85, DR 91, like, but I'm still in there. Why I'm in there? Because no one else has even created anything that's like that. So when you do something that's really unique in the SERPs, you also capture a lot of the clicks, right? And you capture a lot of the clicks. That's a positive signal for the content. So that's why I think about it a lot, as far as like the angle. And I think if you don't have a good angle, don't even go after it personally. That's what I think. So yeah, I'm extreme. But yeah.
Awesome. And I mean, actually circling back to the beginning of the conversation when we talked about niching down, I mean, the common themes throughout the book, you've got niching down, you've got starting, right? Like so many people are afraid to start. But even on just the theme of niching down, like that article that you wrote, best CMSs for SEOs, right? Yep. You didn't just write a generic best CMS article, right? You picked a specific lane, and you stayed in it, you added value, you made it better than what was out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's too, is always keeping it very specific to whatever the core thing is that you do, right? Like, so I like best CMSs isn't even really, I mean, it's relevant in the same kind of realm, but it's not relevant specifically to like what I do. And what I do is SEO. So I add that kind of modifier in there to get more relevance. But yeah, you can keep taking that down different levels. Like, for example, instead of doing best SEO tools, you do best SEO tools for SEO agencies. You can start to get deeper and get into specific, the people that you're really going after. And yes, those have less search volume, but the people that search it are going to convert like crazy, right? Because it's such a relevant match. So that's why like search volume to me it's like one of like, out of all the criteria that I use to target a keyword, search volume is probably like number 7. Like it's not even the thing that I even care about. What I care about is so many other things: relevance, intent, KD, like how difficult is this going to be to actually create an asset that actually beats who's ranking? Like I'm thinking about those things way before I think about like how many searches does it get per month? Like that's not good keyword research. It's just how many searches something gets. That's because it's all contextual. Right? Like funny cat pictures gets like 50,000 searches a month. Is that a good keyword to go after? I don't know about that. Depends on what you're selling. I mean, if you're selling funny cat pictures, maybe, but it just shows you like volume is relative. And then like a personal injury lawyer, you look up like St. Louis car accident lawyer gets like 100 searches a month. And you may look at that and be like, it's pointless, but it's like, no, it's not. If they get one deal, it could be worth $100,000. Yeah. So it's just all relative. So
Crazy. Well, just one or two more questions for you, Nathan.
Sure.
So with the search generative experience, in my opinion, right, there's always going to be referral traffic from the Google search page to websites. Now, will the mix of that change from the standard organic search results? Will there be more citations inside the SGE? Perhaps, but SEOs, it's not going anywhere. So I guess my question for you is, if someone is just starting out in SEO, you've obviously seen a tremendous amount of success. What would your advice be to them?
Just starting out.
Just starting out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would depend on what path you want to go, right? I mean, like, so for example, you've gone the kind of in-house path, right? So, and that's one way to build a career in the SEO space. That's totally a fine path. You can do great with that. There's also the other path you want to be more on the entrepreneurial side, right? And that's a path I personally took. So that's really what I can speak from, right? And I just know, when it comes to going that path, let's say you want to build an agency, for example, or you want to take on clients, like the best thing that you can do in the beginning is just to create your own projects. Like just create 1, maybe 2 projects that you can just beat that website into submission with SEO tactics. Like you need to break things to learn. Like you should do everything that you find, any SEO tactic you find, implement it on the site and see what happens. And just keep doing that over and over and over. And eventually you start to see like, okay, I understand now what I can do and what I can't do. I mean, that's literally what I did when I started, because I, like many other people, had the ambitions of like, I'm going to be a blogger, a full-time blogger. And I wanted to do that. And I started with my baseball pitching blog. And like I was blogging like crazy and I was getting no traffic. I was like, is this how it's supposed to work? Like I'm blogging. I thought I was supposed to be a millionaire. What's going on? So, but then I found SEO and then I started like every single thing I would find, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. And I would implement it on the blog and I would see a result or I'd see like a bad result. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And then I would do it again. And then you start to build those connections and you start to see it with your own eyes based on real experience. And that's the best way to learn, right? I mean, you can read my blog posts until you're blue in the face and you could watch as many videos as you want and read as many books in the world, but it doesn't matter until you actually start a website and get your hands dirty. I mean, it's like if you wanted to be, you wanted to make more baskets in basketball, right? Like you wanted to be able to increase your field goal percentage. You could read about shooting form all day, right? You read about shooting form. You could watch Steph Curry shoot and analyze his mechanics and everything that he does. And you could model him to the fullest extent, but nothing's going to change until you get out on the freaking basketball court and start shooting the basketball.
You got to put the reps in.
Yeah, it is. There's no shortcut for it. So I think fortunately in the SEO world now, there's just so many smart people that you can leapfrog a lot faster now because there's so many people that just share so much. Everyone is just sharing stuff because obviously everyone has their own motives for sharing things, right? But there's a lot of sharing going on. There's a lot of information out there where you can learn. And I'll be honest, when I was starting, there really wasn't that. It was more of like a couple blogs here and there that you would listen to and everyone's kind of like, yeah, this worked for me. And so you're basically on your own, right? You're trying to figure it out on your own. That's how I was doing it. But these days, there's just a lot of smart people sharing stuff. So the best thing to do is learn something and implement, see what happens. Learn something and implement. Or what I do is what I recommend is just in time learning, not just in case learning. And just in case learning is, what we do in school, right? Like we're going to learn about astronomy today. And it's like, okay, I might use that in the future at some point, like just in case I might need to know that, Mars is now cold. But you don't know if that's really going to be a practical information. So it just kind of gets stored in your mind. You may use it, you may not. You probably will lose it because you don't use it, right? But just in time learning is very different because it's literally on the job learning. So like you start your website, you do something on the site and you get stuck at a certain spot and you're like, ooh, I don't know how to fix this. So then you go to Google and you try to find that solution. You find the solution, you implement, and then you keep going again. And then every time you hit a hurdle, you go and get the solution and you go back. You keep doing that back and forth. The only time that you're learning or seeking out information is when you're stuck. When you hit a roadblock, you're like, I don't know the answer anymore. So you can go and seek that information out, obviously through, search or YouTube or whatever, or you could just like hire a coach or something and they'll be like, yeah, you just did this wrong. So fix this. Now go back and keep doing what you need to do. Just for me, I found that that's the best way to learn. Like even when I wrote my book, I didn't like read a bunch of books about how to write a book. I just started writing the book. Like I didn't it wasn't like I didn't need all this background in like how to be an author. I just started writing and like every little hurdle I would hit, I just would try to fix it. And trust me, I hit a lot of hurdles. Even small things. Like when I did like a beta launch of the book for the Academy. So like all the members, I sent it to them first. And so they ordered, and there's just small things like on the order form, I didn't put a phone number. Like you didn't have to put your phone number in. And when I was doing it originally, I was like, yeah, I don't want to make them put their phone number. They need to put their phone number. Well, little did I know when you ship internationally, you need to have a phone number. So I literally I had to go back to all the international orders and be like, guys, sorry, can I have your phone number? And so like learning on the job, right? But I'll never make that mistake again, right? So just, and like, you could have tried to find that information somewhere, but there's just no way that you would, like, it's too granular of a problem to learn like proactively, if you get what I mean. You can only learn it when you're in the fire. And another thing too is like I was printing out the labels and I was printing them out on like computer paper. Once again, just like so stupid because I would print them out and then I'd have to put it. My wife and me were cutting out the labels, like every single label. Then we'd put it on the packaging. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now we're going to need tape. to put it on the packaging. So then we had to use tape, packing tape across the whole label. So if it got hit with rain, it wouldn't ruin the label. So that was what we did in the first batch. And eventually I got a little bit smarter and I was like, okay, well, why don't I just get a label printer that automatically sticks on the thing? So now I have this label printer over here. So because I sign every book, by the way. So I sign every book that's ordered through my website. And so now this label printer, it just prints out these labels. It's a sticker and I just slap it on the package and boom, it gets sent off. So once again, could I have prepared for that? Potentially, I could have maybe, but it's the type of thing where when you learn on the job, you never forget. You will never forget when you work through a mistake.
Yes.
You just will not, because mistakes stick with you and you're like, ooh, I won't make that one again. Yeah. So,
And actually, one final comment on the book, Nathan, on the topic of mistakes. And I just thought that I love the transparency with this. You had talked about the baseball website that you had started. There was a specific mistake with the domain name that you had with that. I just love it. I mean, if you're not making mistakes, you're not growing, you're not making progress. It's okay to make mistakes. And I just feel like too many folks out there aren't as transparent. And I appreciate your transparency in the book on some of the mistakes that you've made along the way, because no one's perfect when they first start.
Yeah, I'm a mistake machine, but I love making mistakes. I really do, because when I make mistakes, I just learn at such a rapid rate. So and it's really just it's a difference between trying to just learn everything up front and just learning by action. And I think learning by action is the best, because you can do things so much faster when you just learn, you just do it and you see what happens, right? Not saying you need to be ignorant and make stupid mistakes, right? I'm not going to go blow all my money on cryptocurrency, but I'm still making educated decision. This is not a high risk thing. I'm talking about freaking packing labels, right? This isn't super high risk here situation, but it's more just those tiny little micro mistakes that you just constantly are pivoting and going back and forth. But it's all because of action. And you're going to learn so much more just by doing something than you are by reading about it or whatever. And then just seeking out information when you're stuck. Right. And you will get stuck. Everyone gets stuck, and no matter what you're doing. So yeah, I could think of the countless examples where I got stuck on something. But then when you make the discovery and you overcome whatever that thing you're stuck on, that you'll never forget that. You'll never forget it, because you'll have found the solution, and that solution will stick with you forever. It's just, everyone has their, to each their own as far as learning. But for me, the irony of it is I wrote a book. So of course I'm de-incentivizing people to not read my book by saying this, but I even tell people in my training that when you go through my training, don't just go through the whole training. Do one little thing. If I say go find keywords by extracting them from your competitors, go do that. Don't think about anything else in the training. Don't worry about it. Just do that one thing and get it right. And I teach people how to do audits, and I show them, don't just do an audit once. You got to do the audit. You need to do 10, 20, 30, 40 audits. And then eventually you'll know what you're doing. Even if I give you the blueprint for an audit, the exact process that I go through, every scenario is different. So every time you do an audit, you're seeing new things that you even to this day, I do an audit and I'm I haven't seen that before. Whoa. That's different. So, it's always learning. You're always learning. You just get better. I will say the one thing, because I've been doing this now for over 10 years, I make less stupid mistakes now. I make mistakes, but I make less stupid mistakes. I don't make a lot. I do not make the same mistakes I made before. I just make new mistakes. And they're just different. You just get better. You just simple as that. You get better, you make better decisions. And that's all this is. You're just making decisions. Some work, some don't. Right. And it's the same with creating content too. Sometimes I'll come up with what I believe is a brilliant idea for content, and I put it out and it's a freaking dud and it sucks and it doesn't do anything. That's just the market telling me what I need to know. I got the feedback. Feedback's telling me that wasn't good, so don't do it again. Do more of what works, right? Keep doing more of what works. But obviously you got to experiment and try new things. But yeah, I mean, like I put out this one that like I thought was the most genius idea. I analyzed all the Shark Tank companies' SEO. Like I literally looked at every single Shark Tank company's SEO and like tried to find like who's done the best, who's done the worst, and like what are the ones that have done the best and what can we take from that. I thought this was going to just kill it. And then I created this video, spent so much time on it, and I put it out, and it was like one of my worst performing videos like I've ever had. And, you know, so it's like you do that, and it's hard because, right, you put your time in it, you put your effort in it, but the market doesn't care about how much time or effort you put into something. The market doesn't care about your effort. It doesn't care about the money you put into it. It doesn't care about how much you care about the thing at all. It means nothing to the market. So once you kind of disconnect in that regard, like you remove the ego from it, and you just say, well, the market didn't like it, so I'm going to try something different on this next one. You just keep doing that over and over. And eventually, you know, like I had one published maybe a month ago that like got 40,000 views, right? And like when I published that one, I was like, I don't even know if this is going to do well. Like sometimes I think it's going to suck, and then it does well, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's almost like it's almost pointless to try to figure it out prior to putting it into the market. Like you need to put it into the market, get that feedback, and just make adjustments. Never ends.
Well, Nathan, this conversation has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for coming on. I guess the final question I have for you is, how can my audience learn more about you? How can they get a copy of this book that my 3-year-old has colored on?
Yeah. Obviously, you can get the book on Amazon, by the way. It does sell there, but I would recommend going through the website just for a couple of reasons. And that's the SEOentrepreneur.com, SEOentrepreneur.com. And you can Google it as well and you'll find it. But the reason you want to go through the site is because I actually give 5 bonuses on top of it. So, and you can only get those bonuses if you go through the site. And plus, I do sign up every single one that goes to the site as well. So a little extra incentive. And plus, people have been taking pictures of the signatures, and I hid it originally. I didn't tell anyone I was going to do that, but now it's out in the open. So yeah, I do sign them. But yeah, and plus, when you buy it, actually, another thing is too, when you buy it through the site, you're only paying for shipping. So if you buy it through Amazon, you're paying for the book and you're paying for shipping, both, unless you have Amazon Prime, of course. So, but yeah, so my site's the best place to get it. And then if you're already like more advanced, let's say you're already doing well with your SEO business, you got a nice pool of clients, and you're looking to like systemize and kind of scale it to the next level, the Academy is the best bet in that case. Because I've built every system that you would ever need for SEO. So,
and what's the domain for that?
You can just go to gotchaseo.com. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nathan. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I hope you got a lot of value from that conversation. I know I did. It would do a lot for me if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel to give me a little momentum in the YouTube algorithm. Take care.